All right, so we've got our transitions. We've got our verse, chorus. So now we're just going to talk about, hey, I'm not going to mix it. I'm going to send it to a mixer. So I'm going to show you what you need to do to send it to another mixer. So with our track in place, I mean, it's great. So in Logic Pro, I like to go down to Project Alternatives, New Alternative, and I'm going to say send to mixer. Save. So if I want to come back to this, I can, but this is so I can send it to mixer. So I'm just going to get rid of all the things that I have muted, and I am going to consolidate all of these things. Actually, probably don't need to consolidate them. Oh, there we go. Exclude. Let's get rid of that. Boom, boom, bam. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is check out my bass. And over here, we see the bass is in stereo. We don't want the bass in stereo if we're sending it to another mixer. So what we're going to do is we're going to bounce in place the bass track, and we're going to bypass all the plugins. And let me show you how that works. So bouncing in place is like this. Let's go back. So you file, actually edit, bounce and join, bounce regions in place. So we're just going to bounce this region in place, and we're going to hit OK, and it's going to go through, bypass the processing that I have on there, because the mix is going to put processing on there. So now we have that track bounce, but it's in stereo still. So what we want to do is come over here and click the two circles that are together like this, and we want one circle. And now we're going to bounce again. Boom, bounce in place, hit OK. Now we have a mono bass, and we can just hide everything else. Boom, mono. We want it in mono because mixing engineers don't need everything in stereo. What needs to be in mono is the lead vocal, the snare drum, the bass. Now, next, we're going to go to the drum kit. And what I like to do is, that's simple. I need to put the snare drum and the kick drum in audio and separate them, because again, I'm sending it to a mixer. And the mixing engineers, some will mix in Reaper, some will mix in Pro Tools, some in Ableton. It depends. If they're mixing in Logic and they have the same plugins, you just send them the session, or you send them the session anyway. But so what I'm gonna do is hit Control, left click, and I'm going to go separate by note pitch. And so now I'm getting this is my snare separated. And I'm going to bounce that, bypass plugins. And that's in mono because my drum kit was in mono, and I did that to save time. And here we go. Now here's our kick drum. Same thing. Let me label it kick. And then this will be labeled snare, because now they're separated. And let's bounce the kick drum. So now we have our kick and our snare in mono. Now we see it looks like it's peaking, but what I do is I go into my toolbox and I go down to, oh my God, I hit W and that tells me where it's, gain tool. And I just gain that down a little bit so there's some headroom for the mixer. I could do that for this as well. So now this I don't have to worry about. So now my kick and my snare are in mono. Now we've got hi-hats. Before the hi-hats, we've got a snare roll, and we're just going to bounce that and just leave that there. We'll probably gain it down a little, or the engineer can gain it down to their liking. That's in mono. And we just hide that. Now our hi-hats are in hi-hats and a shaker, it sounds like. We're going to do the same thing that we did to the kick and the snare when they were together. So I know that this is going to be hats, and this is going to be shaker. And let's just label the shaker, and then bounce it. Actually, shaker. And let's do the same thing with the hats. It's already there. Boom. So you see where all this is going. Boom. So we've got our hi-hat, kick, snare, and what we can do if we wanted to is we could make a track stack if we're mixing ourselves, and we could group the kick, snare, hi-hat in a group, and we could process that all together. Moving along, we've got our bells, and then that can be in stereo, but sometimes that could be in mono. Depends. Bounce it in stereo, because if the engineer wants to put it in mono, they can do it. Again, what needs to be in mono: kick, snare, lead vocal, and maybe the hi-hat. Depends. So we'll leave the bells, leave that up to the engineer. We have a tabla, and it looks like there's more than one. Nice. Okay. That could be left by itself. If you want to separate it, you can. Same thing. Right click, separate by note pitch. Now there's the main tabla, and then the one at the top and the one at the bottom are the little variations. But what I would do is just bounce it just like that. Boom. So all that's there. Nice. And here's, let's get rid of that. Talking drum. Now that could be mono. So when we do that, we're just going to bounce it. And hit the circles. We're going to take this processing off, this plugin, and we're going to bounce that. Now, what happens if it's not bouncing in mono? You probably have to have one of these engaged. Include volume and pan automation. Make sure this is engaged, and then it should bounce in mono and not stereo. So if I unclick this and I hit OK, it may just still bounce in stereo. Oh no, it bounced in mono. Great. Well, we're not going to worry about it then. There we go. So we've got our talking drum. And here's our Centaur. I would leave that in stereo because we want it to kind of take up space. So we'll bounce that. Boom. So now we have everything. So we're going to send this off to a mixer. Our transitions are already there. It's already in audio, so we don't need to bounce it. So what we want to do now is file, export all tracks as audio files. And we hit that. And what we want to do in the bounces section, which is here, I'm going to go new folder. The name of the song, Gatti Baggio, which is Nepalese for what time is it? And I like to put the BPMs because the engineer is going to know what BPM it's in. And sometimes you put the key in right now. I can't think of the key. I have to look it up. And they all know there's 44, but as long as they got the BPM, they can line things up. And that's what the folder is going to be. Boom. And then I click on export. And so now it's going to go through and it's going to bounce everything into a folder so you can send it to a mixing engineer.